everyone's nervous and stressed and on the edge. And am I allowed to tell jokes?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So in the old days, you used to cough to cover a fart. Now you fart to cover a cough.
Right. That's 2020 for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And I can see it in your face, yeah. I'm the one you can't replace, yeah.
Okay, guys, welcome to the show. My name is Jadon Lane, and I'm here with my buddies Jacob and Jeromy Stacy.
What's going on, man?
What's up?
What you just heard was a little something from an interview we did with a professor of psychology at Midwestern State here in Wichita Falls, Texas. His name is Dr. Vandehay.
We're going to dive real deep into the problem of procrastination with him.
So without further ado, here's that interview with Dr. Vandehay. All right, so today we are joined by Dr. Michael Vandehay, a psychology professor. We see that you got your bachelor's degree from the University of Oregon, as well as your master's degree and PhD from Indiana State University. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your field of study, why you chose, to teach what you teach and why you enjoy it.
So I'm a counseling psychologist. Most people like counseling psychologist, clinical psychologist, psychiatrist. What's the difference? Psychiatrists have medical degrees. They prescribe medications, and that's their primary focus. So I'm on the therapy side because I think a lot of social issues can be looked at developmentally.
So the main topic of today's discussion is going to be procrastination, as Jeromy told you. As a psychology expert, and you're our expert for today, what is procrastination?
So procrastination is putting off till tomorrow what should have been done yesterday.
Why do people, especially young people our age, why do we fall in the trap that is procrastination?
So I'm going to flip this for a second. I'm going to ask you guys why you think you procrastinate. And then I'm going to tell you what we've actually learned when we research it.
Okay, you go first, Jeromy.
Yeah. Okay. So I was really excited to do this topic because I feel like I'm really, really good at procrastination. I have really been thinking about this over the last couple of years, why it is that I procrastinate. I think one of the biggest reasons that I have procrastinated in my life, not just the short term, like on like papers and exams, like studying and things like that, but like long term is like kind of the fear of the unknown, like even the fear of failure. Like I don't really know what exactly I want to do with my life. So why am I still like hustling through college right now? I could put it off. Or like, well, I could get the degree, I could go out for this one job that I want, but if I don't get it, then I failed in a sense. So yeah, I think that's the biggest ones for me.
I'm angry with you because you really nailed it. And I was hoping to kind of like surprise you guys with the answer.
No, I've been thinking about this one a lot.
I think for me, it most of the time in my life, I think it comes down to more of a selfish attitude. So if I'm, I have homework or I have a work project that I need to get done, it's, to me, like in surface level, it's a whole lot easier just to like be like, okay, I'm going to put that off. I'm going to go do what I want to do right now. The thing I heard this put like this one time, like the whole thought of selfishness. And it's really funny to think about it this way. For like kids and everyone growing up or read these stories, right? Like children's books, like the prince goes and saves the princess, or whatever, the princess, and we read these stories about the main characters, and we always put ourselves as the role as the main character. But what you don't realize when you get onto the real world is that there are like billions of other main characters also.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, great, you're important, but also there's a lot of other people that are important too. And so I think like the problem, I guess, is what I'm saying with the procrastination for me is when I put myself, I'm like, no, I'm the main character. I'm going to get what I want when I want it. That creates so many more problems for me and the people around me, because I chose what seemed easier and what I just wanted to do.
So you're talking about competing alternatives.
Right.
And when one alternative is more attractive, you're going to go towards that because that's what you want, not thinking about the social consequences.
What about you, Jadon?
So for me, I procrastinate because I'm a perfectionist and I'm afraid to fail, which I think is what you were saying you wanted to surprise us about, right? Failure. So yeah, my answer is pretty simple. Is I like to put things off until I think I can do them perfectly. Like if it's not the perfect time, I don't want to do it. If it's not the perfect day, if I'm not in the perfect mood, I don't want to do it. So tell me why I'm wrong.
You're not. So if I'm talking to people who identify as procrastinators, probably 80% of the time I ask them, are you a perfectionist? And they'll look at me like surprised. Because of course we think of procrastinators as, you know the story of the ants and the grasshopper, and the ants save all summer and the grasshoppers go as it has fun. And then the ants have the food, the grasshoppers don't, and they have to come banging at the ant's door. So we kind of put that stereotype on procrastinators, and that's not really what we find. Now, I'm sure if you brought 5 people in here, they'd give you, a different focus based on which research they're really into. What I've learned because I'm a licensed psychologist and I do work with individuals in a small private practice, is that that individuals are so worried about, if I do this a week early, then I'm going to come back to it, then I'm going to come back to it, then I'm going to come back to it. So if I procrastinate and have a timeline that I can't meet, I get it good enough done, can turn it and be free of it. And so when I hear people say I work well under pressure, what you're telling me is you get it good enough done and then you can let it go, because now you're behind on something else, which then lets you move to that. And if you do it ahead of time, then you can ruminate. So most perfectionists seem to be that. Now, I'm sorry, perfectionists. Most perfectionists do that. There is a group of procrastinators that really are, oh, was that this week? But they're not worried whether they graduate by 22 or 24. So there are some people, but they're the minority. They're just like, oh, what come may. Okay. But most of us, procrastination. The other thing is overscheduled. Do any of you schedule 25 hours a day just so you're not bored?
Yeah, a lot.
And then the competing alternatives. I mean, sometimes it's just, this is more fun or more interesting to do. And so we delay. So what I like to ask people is, and again, I'm simplifying it, but I think it's still worthwhile. Are you the kind of person that makes a list? 7 things to do. Do you do the small things and cross them off so that you have energy and can focus on the one big thing? Or do you have to get the one big thing done so that it's off your shoulders and now you can focus on the small things?
Right. See, I think when it comes to, I'm a list person, and I think it's subjective depending on, like I said, my mood or how much time I have, or, it just depends what the task is to me. It doesn't always have to be the small things first or the big thing first. To me, it just depends on what the tasks are.
So here's the next question. Do you ever put things on your list that you've already done so you can have things already crossed off?
Yes.
No, I'm not that kind of person.
No, I definitely do that on almost every list.
It builds like motivation. It's like, look, I've already got things done that need to be done.
Sometimes the first thing on the list is make a list. Like, check that one off. I made the list. Oh, man.
Do you ever fall into the trap of procrastination?
When I do, it tends to be I'm an overscheduler, but I don't like to waste time. In order to get done what I've wanted to do in life, I've been kind of the don't put off to tomorrow what you should have done yesterday. So if I can do it today and get it over with, that means I have more time tomorrow. But that has been a coping skill I've used to not run into the wall.
So I guess the last question I have, we talked about why people procrastinate, how people procrastinate. How do you fight against procrastination?
Well, you have to know yourself. And so one of the questions, if we're looking at like competing alternatives, is if I live with roommates or, now you all have cell phones, so, you can get a hold of each other anytime. Is there any chance someone is going to say, hey, let's go play pool, or let's go out for a drink, or let's go rollerblading, or whatever the current thing is? And so if that's the case, I need to turn my phone off until I need to minimize external stimuli that will draw my attention away. There's a concept called the Premack principle, where you establish a desirable behavior. So let's say you enjoy playing Xbox. Okay. Do you have the discipline to say, until I read this chapter, I'm not allowed to turn on the Xbox? Because what you do is you say, you know what, it's been a long day. I'm just going to do a couple maps in Call of Duty. And we all know a couple maps turns into 3 hours. And then you're tired, got to go get something to eat. Now it's 4 hours. Now you're sitting down to read that chapter. Whereas if you get the chapter read, eat something, and then play Call of Duty, you can play till you you're done. So are you disciplined enough to use the desirable state of affairs as the reward for dealing with the undesirable things? Now, I'm a small list person, so I get the big thing. I don't touch it until I get all my little things done, because then I can focus. My brain doesn't let me go, I got to do this, 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 and do a little in each one. There are other people out there, and this is know thyself. Their personalities, they get bored if they work on just one thing. So they do a little, they get bored, they hop back and little, and 2 days later, it's all done. I don't know how they function, but they look at me and go, how do you function? So do you know yourself and how you best tackle problems? A little bit at a time, or just jump in neck deep and get it done?
I'm just getting back into school after being out for like 2 years. Okay, so I'm getting back in and I'm like, okay, I cannot keep up the same habits that I did 2 years ago. It didn't work. There's a reason why I just kind of crashed and burned for a little while. Let's be honest. And so I'm trying out starting do 30 minutes per class or per topic every day.
Awesome.
And theoretically, I'm thinking it's better than knocking out the big thing at the last minute there and the next thing after that. What are your thoughts on that? Does that work for everybody, or?
It should. And this is why when we're talking about learning. So if you're one of these people that can cram and get an A, let's say you're one of the 3 people in a class of 80 that can cram and set the curve. Probably a few weeks later, you remember very little from the test. So for whatever reason, you have good test taking skills. So if you're coming to school, you're paying tuition, and you keep going to class until we're tired of you and we give you a piece of paper and hope you go away and never come back, then you've got a degree. If you want to be educated, you want to have a brain that knows stuff, can pull themes and facts from long-term memory and do it accurately. You've got to expose yourself to the material. And the method you described increases the likelihood of deep comprehension. It allows you to pull ideas together for what's called insight learning, and so that you can solve problems. And I will argue that that strategy will set you up for a much more successful future than the person that leaves here with a piece of paper. And I don't want any of you leaving here degreed. I want all of you leaving here educated. And that is a different strategy.
So the degree is just a representation of being educated, but it's really on us to determine, are we going to leave here degreed or are we going to leave here educated? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the challenge of procrastination can be a very big defining point for, whether it's the degree or the actual education.
Right. Because if you're procrastinating and you're last minuting it, then you're just surface exposing yourself to it, surviving and moving on. The other thing is, for those people who get overwhelmed. So we didn't talk about anxiety. Some people do procrastinate due to anxiety. Mm-hmm. And so that sense of it's too much, they're overwhelmed, and that can be very paralyzing. My heart goes out. If you've ever had anxiety and you're like, why is it so hard? It shouldn't be. It's a struggle. Is that at the end of the week, if you do 30 minutes a day 5 times, it's 2.5 hours of work done. Now, if you do that across every class, how many hours of work do you not have to do on the weekend, which lowers you being overwhelmed? This is an old career recommendation, but is create a list of 5 things every day you have to get due, and you don't go to bed till the first one's done. If you get the first one done, you ask yourself, do I have enough energy to do the second one? And at the end of the week, you've got at least 5 things off your list. And that recommendation can be very powerful. Now, some days you get all 5 done. Some days you get 1.5 things done. But at the end of the week, you don't have those things still on your list, which sets up that cascade of being overwhelmed, getting behind, just doing a crappy job, but it's done. That's what you're trying to avoid.
See, I feel like that strategy would work well for me, and I'm going to try that now that you recommended it.
Yeah. And again, but you can't look at the 4 things you didn't do and go, oh, no. I got one thing done, and this was the one that needed to get done today.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one more question that's a little bit broader than just specifically in college, and kind of more along in life in general. So I've been told in the past that overscheduling can be really bad for you. And so there's this idea of intentionally taking rest, having rest time, which is different than like Jacob, what you were saying earlier about like the kind of instant gratification thing where you're like putting it off and only doing what you want to do. What's the difference between the instant gratification side of that and then actually having rest?
So, silly saying, but when the going gets tough, the tough take a nap. Sleep is restorative. It allows our body to deal with stress. Okay. And so when you're awake and you're solving problems, that's a stress response. When you sleep, your body slows down, the mind gets some rest, and then it comes back to the problem, sometimes with insight or from a different direction. And what seemed like an insurmountable problem is now doable. So when you're showing fatigue, and here's an example. If you're studying and you've turned 3 pages and have no idea what you've looked at, you're fatigued. You're no longer encoding into long-term memory. Okay, you're actually wasting your time. Now we need a rest. Now go run or play Xbox. No, not Xbox for 3 hours, but I might go play 2 or 3 maps, now get back to it, and you're re-alert. So when we look at the adult attention span, about every 20 to 40 minutes, a well-functioning adult, their brain checks out. You ever been in class and suddenly 5 minutes have gone by and you don't know?
Every day.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, if I'm studying something for a big test, between an hour and a half and 2 hours, I now need a big break. And a big break might be going out for lunch or dinner, might be going to, so I might get up in the morning, study hour and a half. And about every 20, 40 minutes, I take about a 5-minute break or less to reorient attention. But around an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on my interest in material, how comfortable I'm feeling, fatigued, not fatigued, whatnot. The flip side is, if I have the energy and the alertness and I'm fresh and I'm choosing to go play Xbox instead of studying, now I'm running from what I need to do versus using the break to enhance what I need to do.
Yeah, that's some great insight.
Yeah, that was really good.
Everything has been great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Van de Hey, for
Thank
coming
you
on
so
and
much for
talking
being
to
with
us.
us today.
Welcome. Have a successful semester and stay healthy, y'all.
Yes, sir. Thank
Sir,
you very
thank
much.
Thank you.
Finna step out with my dogs and be some savages. Larry Bentley, Fendi bag, living lavish. For the game, chasing that bag of habits to me. Yeah, all my boys wildin' out
But there's a billion princes in the world that save
Yeah.
the princess.
That's my favorite part. Who's that was me? Oh my gosh.
That was a good point, though. I like that point, too.
Yeah, that was nice.
Oops,
Nice one.
I did a cold opening again.
Nice
Oh my
one.
gosh, guys!
I'm recording.
I promise I'm not that conceited. It was mainly a joke. Maybe not. A little bit. Probably.
Okay, well. Okay, so that was an interview with Dr. Van de Hey, our special guest, and I think he had a lot of great things to say. Jeromy, what was your main takeaway from what Dr. Van de Hey had to say?
Okay, so the biggest thing that I heard him talk about, he didn't talk about it for very long, but he talked about the idea of procrastinating because of anxiety. Yeah, and I feel the exact same way when I say that my heart goes out to anyone who is dealing with anxiety right now, because it's tough. It's really tough. So just a little bit of background on why that resonated with me so much. About 2 years ago, I quit school for a little while. I started a family. I was working full-time. I was going to school full-time, and it was really, really hard. I've always been a procrastinator, and I think I usually procrastinate because of
Like the instant gratification.
the
type thing.
instant gratification, exactly. And so, but what it turned into is like I had a really packed schedule, and so I'd put things off, and then I would continue putting things off, and so like I began worrying that I wasn't going to be able to do it. I began worrying that I was going to fail at whatever I was trying to accomplish, and instead of like clearing up my schedule, freeing up my schedule a little bit, so I would stop putting off the things that were important, I just continued to pile more and more on, and it really, really got heavy for me. Like at the time, I did not realize that I was experiencing anxiety, but looking back at it now, I can tell that I was a wreck. I had a full schedule. I couldn't do anything clearly. I was constantly worried that I wouldn't be able to accomplish the next thing. And so what ended up happening was I would just get in this spot where I was kind of paralyzed. Like I would have something to do and I just wouldn't do it. Like I would have days where, I mean, I would get up, I wasn't like stuck in bed or anything. And on the outside, you may not know it, but it was like, I just physically would not even attempt to do the things that I needed to do on a daily basis because even the simplest things were overwhelming. And so that, you know, if there's anybody out there right now that's going through that, you just got to know that like you're going to make it. It's going to be okay. Start trying to free up your schedule a little bit. Don't overschedule, like whether it's a class or a few hours at work or some other random obligation you have, volunteering or hanging out with friends on a regular basis. Like, you know, give yourself a break. Like you're being way, way, way too hard on yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anxiety is something I think a lot of people deal with that they don't even know that they deal with.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like to accept that they're dealing with anxiety. So, Jacob, what did you come away with after we talked to Dr. Vandehey?
So kind of what I got from what he was saying, and I think, Jeromy, it can be kind of applied to what you were talking about a little bit. And that is, this isn't like exactly what he said, but this is kind of how I heard it. Again, you know, I think that's the point of why we're doing this, is to get what we heard, not necessarily just what he said. And to me, that is like putting a name to the problem. Like it's really hard to overcome like an obstacle when you don't even know what it looks like, when you can't put a name to it. So I think that one of the things he was giving us in a piece of advice he gave was put a name to the problem. In the way he said that you have to know yourself. So you have to know what kind of procrastinator you are to be able to overcome it. So he gave us a couple different pieces of advice to go with, and I think something I want to try is doing the list. So he told us to try doing lists, and he asked if, you know, when we made a list, if we were a small things person or a big things person first. And I just don't make a list.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good thing to start with. But in that, I find that like my attention span is very short. Like I like to do fun things and I like new things. And like, if I could just every 5 minutes of my life do something new that I've never done before, I would be thrilled. Like that would be amazing for me. So I think for me, I'm going to try the way of accomplishing tasks that he gave on like doing a little bit of this task and then moving to the next one, doing a little bit of this task, which is funny because he said he thought those people were insane pretty much, you know, like he was
Right.
like, I have no idea how they function.
Yeah, because he's the opposite.
Yeah. But for me, I'm like, are you telling me that you work on the same thing completely until it's done? Like, that's so impressive. What the heck? How do you just continue to focus on one thing like that? But I think what was really good for me is hearing that like, neither way is right and neither way is wrong.
Yeah, it's
like,
huge.
You just want to accomplish something. Like, here are the things laid out that we need to do. Just get the things done and you've accomplished the same amount of things. It doesn't matter how you get it.
That's the beautiful thing about humans is we all complete tasks and do things differently. Some things work well for some, and you know, some things work terrible for some.
Yeah.
The thing that I took away from Dr. Vandehey, sorry.
You're good.
The thing that I took away from Dr. Vandehey was whenever he was talking about getting rid of external stimuli, such as, let's say I have a big essay I need to write and it's due by midnight and I haven't started it because I procrastinated. He was saying like, you know, take away everything that you can that could possibly lead you to procrastination.
Yeah.
So for instance, turn your phone off, put it in another room, turn your TV off, turn your Xbox off, go to the library and study so you can't be tempted by, you know, wanting to play Xbox or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So getting rid of the external stimuli are the words that he used, is something that I think could be super effective for me personally.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's good.
I agree with that because I don't even have a video game system in my house of any sort, no console in my house at all. And I can't do the thing where it's like you do some and then reward yourself with video games, do some, reward yourself. I like, if I get on video games, I'm going to be on video games and I'm never going to be off of video games. And so I cut it out by not even having it in my house at all.
That's impressive, Jeromy.
That and I can't afford one. So
The truth comes out.
I'm rocking the 360 console, brother. I'm right there with you.
360.
Oh yeah.
Sheesh.
It's the latest one, the latest 360.
Well, thank you all again for listening to our interview with Dr. Vandehey about procrastination. We hope that you'll tune in again next time. But for now, goodbye and stay safe and have a great day.
Yeah, all my boys wildin' out is savage for me, yeah. I do this for my slime ones, it's bragging urgent. I do it for the